So at the most recent Apple event, Apple debuted two of its latest iPads, the 8th generation iPad with the A12 Bionic chip, support for Apple Pencil, and support for the Smart Keyboard, and its fully redesigned iPad Air with some brand new cool colors, and oh yeah, support for the A14 Bionic chip, the first time this chip is appearing in any Apple product. And don't forget the iPad Pro that's already on the market with the A12Z Bionic chip and that LiDAR camera. So many iPads, so many Bionic chips, so many questions. Like, what if you're buying an iPad for the first time? Which one should you purchase? Or if you're a person with an iPad already or an iPad Pro, should you get the iPad Air or should you get the new iPad Pro? Which one's better? We're going to try to answer all that and declutter all this information just a little bit in this video. So without further ado, let's just get started. Now, one of the first things I'll say is that the cool thing about Apple is no matter which iPad you purchase, you're still going to be rocking the iPad OS. So you're still getting the same based software experience. The only really difference is going to be the hardware experience between these three different iPads. It really is just a budget, middle, and an advanced version of the iPad. So there's a spectrum here and you just kind of have to find out where you fit in within that spectrum. So just like any other piece of technology, when you go to purchase an iPad, it's what you're going to do with it that matters. So with that said, let's start off with the budget version of the iPad. Still going to run you over $300, but it's still a really low cost option that still offers some really cool features as well. But like I said, the 8th generation iPad that was debuted starts retailing at about $329 for the Wi-Fi option and $459 for the Wi-Fi and cellular option. The design itself is very familiar. If you've seen an iPad, you know what this 8th gen iPad looks like. Apple didn't go crazy with a redesign on this. They kind of just stuck with what works. You get that basic home Touch ID button with the screen, 10.2 inch display that's enclosed within the bezels of this iPad itself. Still looks very familiar, still looks old school. But even with the old school look and the lower price tag, you're still getting some pretty good internals with this iPad as well. Like I said, you're getting an A12 Bionic processor with a 64-bit architecture and Apple's Neural Engine. The screen itself is 2160 by 1620 pixel Retina display. You're getting an 8 megapixel back camera and a 1.2 megapixel front camera for all your FaceTime and I guess FaceTime calls. Fun. You get Apple Pencil support and Smart Keyboard support, and this is a perfect tablet for a college student that's on a budget or someone that just needs a budget level tablet. Take notes, do some really small word processing, emails, and because of the battery capacity and the screen itself, it also is a pretty good media consumption. You can watch YouTube videos, Hulu, Netflix, and it looks beautiful on the screen itself. It's also really great for just surfing the internet and going through social media. So this is kind of like your everyday tablet where you're doing some really rudimental stuff that you don't want to do on the smaller screen on your phone. You kind of want a bigger display. That's where this one comes in. Now, it's not super portable, but it's light enough to move around without any issues. With the Wi-Fi model, you're dealing with probably a 1.8 pound or 490 grams. With the Wi-Fi and cellular option, it's just a little bit up from that. It's 1.9 pounds or 495 grams. Like I said, it's a really good entry-level tablet if you haven't purchased an iPad before, or if you have another tablet and you're getting into iPads for the first time, or if you have an older iPad that you don't really do too much on, this is a perfect replacement for that. It's going to be a little bit faster and still not break the bank. Where the biggest confusion seems to be coming in is between the iPad Pro and the iPad Air, and the reason for that confusion is that Apple, with the iPad Air, put their latest and greatest chip in, the A14 Bionic. The chip is not in any other Apple product as of yet, and it's supposed to be the chips that's going to be in the brand new iPhones that haven't been debuted yet. So when people look at that versus the iPad Pros that were already on the market with the A12Z Bionic chip, they tend to think that the Air is a little bit more powerful than the Z. But we're going to go through some of the specifications of both of these tablets and show you where the Pro differentiates itself from the Air. So one of the first things you'll see about the Air is it basically looks exactly like the iPad Pro. I think they just took those frames and models and went all in with the Air redesign with some awesome new colors added to it. You're dealing with a 10.9 inch display. It's also just a slight thicker than the iPad Pros themselves. When I say slightly thicker, you're dealing with millimeters here. The Air is 1.24 inches or 6.1 millimeters versus the Pro that's 1.23 inches or 5.9 millimeters. So it really is just a smidge thicker than the iPad Pros. Now, the cool thing is you do get support for the 2nd gen Apple Pencil. Charges the exact same way with the magnet on top. You get a USB Type-C connection, which is always great. And like I said, it's the first Apple device that's going to have the A14 Bionic chip with the 5 nanometer processors processors, and the tons and tons of transistors that Apple talked about in the keynote event. And this is again where the confusion pops in. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll realize that processor versus processor, you're dealing with a CPU that only has about 6 cores versus 8 cores in the iPad Pro, and the GPU in the iPad Air is only 4 cores versus again 8 cores in the iPad Pro. So you're basically doubling your GPU power if you were to go with an iPad Pro. And that double graphics power really comes into play when you're doing graphically intensive things, and it also helps the overall responsiveness on the iPad Pros themselves. And that's where you also get into some of the other differences between the Air and the Pro. One being that the iPad Air doesn't have Face ID. It has Touch ID that's integrated into the power button, which can be a positive for some people and a negative for some. The Pros are also a little bit brighter with 600 nits versus 500 nits in the iPad Air. And with the iPad Pros, you're also having that adaptive frame rate technology within the screen that goes up to 120 Hertz or 120 frames per second versus a 60 frames per second on the iPad Air. So you're getting a lot more smoother, fluid motion on the iPad Pro. And again, that really comes in handy when you're using that Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil really depends on the GPU and CPU and the screen itself to make sure that latency between the time you write something on the screen and the time it actually appears on the screen to be fluid, clean, crisp, just like pen to paper type of responsiveness. You're not going to get as much of a responsiveness on the iPad Air as you would get on the Pro. So if you're a person that takes a lot of notes and uses the Apple Pencil a ton, then the Pro may be the better option for you versus the Air. So when you really break it down, the iPad Air is really that middle of the road tablet that's going to give you enough power for just about anything you need to do while cutting back on some of the bells and whistles, that True Motion, brightness, Face ID, all that's been taken out. And for the majority of the users, that's going to be just fine. If you need a little bit more power than the standard iPad offers while still having some of those great features and still having enough power to do what you need to do without breaking the bank, the iPad Air is going to be the perfect device for you. But if you need all those pro level things like the True Motion on the screen, the higher GPU, the higher CPU processing power, you use the Apple Pencil a lot, you love Face ID, then the iPad Pro is definitely going to be the one you want to stick with. So if you're coming from an iPad Pro already, going to an iPad Air may be a little bit of a downgrade for you, but you'd kind of have to assess what features you're currently using on your Pro and see if those features will transition well with the Air. If they do, then you may want to go for the Air as a cost saving without getting rid of too much power. But if you really use every single inch of your iPad Pro, then going to the Air may be a little bit wanting for you. And also don't forget, when new devices hit the market, the old devices kind of get a really good price point. So if you're upgrading from a regular iPad and you do want an iPad Pro, try looking at the 2nd gen iPad Pros. They're still available on the market and you can get them at a really good price discount nowadays. Anyways guys, I hope this kind of clears up the confusion just a little bit on the iPad Pros, iPad Airs, and 8th generation iPads that are available. They're all really good devices. Again, just kind of evaluate them for what they do, what you need them to do, and then your choice will never be the wrong choice because you're buying something based on your needs. Anyway guys, let me know what you think about Apple's brand new suite of iPads in the comment section down below. Which one are you looking into? Which one did you already purchase? Which one are you thinking of purchasing? Comment in the comment section down below this video. And while you're down there, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Go ahead and hit that like button, that subscribe button, and that bell for notification. The bell's actually pretty important because it's the only way you guys are going to know and release some cool, helpful content like this one. Until next time guys, you can check out a video we did about the Apple Watch and that family setup option that kind of gives you the option to set up an Apple Watch without an iPhone. I'm going to put that video right on top there, and underneath the bottom is going to be something that YouTube believes you'd enjoy watching. Guys, thanks so much again for checking out the video, and as always, make sure to stay safe, and until I see you next time, peace out.